Hey, welcome to the Trader Tuesday for the 26th of March, I guess it is. So spring is here and we had some snow last night in Colorado, but it's going to be 60 degrees tomorrow, so or Thursday. Typical weather here, but um I'm just welcoming Mark Fenton. So Mark and I don't know, Mark, when did you start with Sheridan Mentoring? You remember?
Well, I started as a student in '05 and I started mentoring in '07.
Okay, because I was a student in '06, and then I helped Dan leave Option View and then started working for him full time. I think it was about the summer of '07. That was probably about the time that we started working together, I guess.
Yeah. I was just part-time in '07. I went full-time in August of '08 as a mentor and full-time trader.
Yeah. So, and I left in 2014, so we worked together for, 6 years or so. Um, but I've known, like I said, I've known Mark a long time. Good guy, great trader, and lots of experience. And we're happy that things kind of worked out at Sheridan Mentoring the way they did. So Mark's ended up over here. Um, so I guess the whole purpose of Trader Tuesday is to get to know people, and that's kind of the backstory of how we got together. But maybe you want to tell people like how you got to where you're at as far as trading goes.
Sure. I started trading penny stocks back in the late '90s. Then I moved on with the tech boom into trading tech stocks. And then I got kind of disenchanted with that. So I went into commodities and I started trading a lot of options in commodities. I can remember when an option contract was $60. So if you put on a vertical, it was $120 to buy and sell, say, a one lot call vertical in oil. And a lot of things back then were really based on trying to play for huge moves because of that. I mean, you wouldn't
Right.
do that for a small one. But during that time, and I might also say at the time, I was still a paramedic. I was a paramedic for 23 years. And as a paramedic, where I worked, you worked 24-hour shifts. So you only worked 10 days a month, and sometimes those were even weekends. So I probably only worked maybe 7 weekdays a month. And towards the end of my career, which I retired in '08, I got myself stationed at a station house that had very few calls with my seniority. So I basically traded full time from about, I don't know, '03 on. Well, in '05, it seemed to me that I just wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, you'd make some wins, lose, make some wins, lose. So I decided to go get some ops education in '05, which I did. And it really worked well for me. And by the time '08 came around, I had shot my back as a medic, so to speak. Too much lifting people cold in the middle of the night. I had to have a spinal fusion, so I retired from that, and I became a full-time trader and a mentor, where which is what I've been doing ever since. And over that time, I've done everything. I've gone from um, different strategies, iron condors, all different kinds, iron butterflies, all different kinds of flies, calendars, and in all different vehicles. And then over time, I got to where I honed that, probably about 2015 or so is, or 2016 is when I began to just exclusively trade the SPX as far as the bulk of my trading. I do some speculation trading once in a while in stocks around earnings or that type of thing, or the VIX, which, by the way, I just read an article on the VIX. Apparently, they're expecting a huge move in it. So, anyway, time to do those verticals in the VIX, I suppose. But so now I primarily trade SPX, almost exclusively all call or all put flies, calendars, diagonals, sometimes back ratios. But I've really, I've really enjoyed going through all the different facets of trading, although many of them have been painful. But I've found that mentoring, believe it or not, is probably where I've learned the most about trading, because not only are you engaged every day in what works and what doesn't for yourself, you see every day when you're mentoring people what works for them and what doesn't work. So I try to give people the benefit of that experience with all of my teaching here at Aramar. That I've seen it. I've probably made most of the mistakes I talk about, And if I haven't, I've seen it done and that type of thing. So I try to forewarn people, although I know it's hard as traders and it's hard for me too, that it seems like you have to get burned yourself. Like you never let Mark or Mark could never let someone else tell him, hey, that skill is hot. And you had to try it out. And so that's what I've tried to do as a mentor and an options educator is teach people the benefit from the benefit of my and others' experience. I always tell people that good judgment usually comes from bad experience, right? That's when we learn the most when things go wrong. And
Yeah,
hopefully I've
I had
accumulated
a
a lot of
teacher I had a teacher in eighth grade who a math teacher. She said that the only questions you usually remember on a test are the ones you got wrong.
exactly. Bill Lang says, is Mark a perma bear? Yes, I am a bit of a perma bear. That doesn't mean that I don't recognize that we're in a bull market and the market can go up. It's just that my own point of view, I'm always worried more about it going down more than ever now. And it just keeps building every day in this market. I mean, I think you have to have a very, very sharp eye on the downside when we're at these levels. But yeah, I call myself a perma bear. That is true. But that's what I like about non-directional trading calendars, flies. I get tired of picking direction. So this way I can lean a direction with a calendar or a fly or a diagonal. But if I'm wrong, it can still work for me, right? Because you have room on the upside, room on the downside. It can stay in the center. And to me, that just spells peace and quiet. Check in on your positions, a couple of times a day. This is what I like to do, although I'm in the front of the screen a lot anyway. But when I'm not educating folks, I just check in here and there on the market. I'm not one to stare at it all day. And I'm not really interested in strategies where you need to watch it that close. I like a more theta positive, laid back approach to things where I can just do other things with my life and watch every tick. I probably rambled a
Yeah.
little long there, Tom, but go ahead. You
No,
got
no, that's
a
good. Yeah.
point?
Like my favorite assignment in the Air Force was teaching. And I noticed as a teacher, you have to think of different ways for the light bulb to come on for people. And so you as a teacher tend to learn more than the student does from my experience.
Oh, you
And
absolutely do. Yeah.
um, I noticed like your last calendar trade, the market really moved hard against you to the upside after the Nvidia earnings, and
Uh-huh.
but you still made money on it. So like you said, it's non-directional, but you can handle a big move.
Right. And you learn some patience. The more you do these type of trades, you realize that, hey, just because I'm way up, maybe upper part of the graph, I'm down money. It does give you some peace of mind to know you can fix it if it continues going. You can be more patient and let that theta work for you, which I love letting theta work for me. It's made a lot of insurance companies rich. That's what they do. They sell you a risk management platform, you pay for it. If you don't have a claim, they keep the money. And that's essentially what we do when you do calendars, flies, iron condors, or whatever type of trade like that. You let them give you the theta, you the money, and then you manage it from there, just like an insurance company does. And you don't get too many of those guys going broke.
I heard option premium sellers described as taking the risks or managing the risks that other people don't want, and that's kind of what we're doing.
Exactly. Because we do a lot of, in this market, nobody wants to hear about the downside at all. But if you know how to manage it, you can actually even have that come back or take advantage of the downside where, about 80% of market participants are long. And if the market goes down, they don't get anything out of that. But with this option trading, we can make money whether the market goes up, down, or sideways, which is what is appealing to me about it.
So, Mark, you've been mentoring for what, 16 years or so?
Yeah, 16
What
years
what
full
what
time.
kinds of things as a teacher have you evolved or noticed or been surprised with?
Oh, sure. One thing is for sure the biggest mistake you can make, well, one of them, I say that about a few things. One is getting too big too fast. I've done it. I think everybody's done it. You get into trading style, you go, holy cow, this really works. Next thing you know, you go from maybe doing one contract to 10, and then you get spanked, right? Because you get too big and you think you're a genius and you're unfallible. And what happens? Boom, you get your head handed back to you. So I always tell people, don't get too big too fast. Never get into a trade, I don't care what kind it is, unless you know when and how you're going to exit, whether good or bad, and when and how you're going to repair it. If you're going to repair it, how would you go about an adjustment in a calendar? When would you do it? What are all the things you need to consider? If you don't have all those answers, then you probably shouldn't put on live flies or calendars until you do just do paper, or at least do very small, because not having those answers is a problem. And if you know everything ahead of time, and Tom, I know you'll relate to this. If you know what you're going to do ahead of time, and this was true when I was a medic, there's a format to things. As Tom knows, Tom's a former pilot. If your engines go out at 30,000 feet, there's a
There's
system, right?
procedures. Yeah,
There's a
exactly.
procedure, there's a system, because otherwise you'd go, oh my God, what am I going to do? But you go, okay, let's check this, let's check that, let's check this. And it's the same thing when you're a paramedic or you're in emergency medicine in general, everything is formulaic like that. Okay, they're on the ground. Are they unconscious? Okay, are they breathing? Okay, this full system that you go through, which translated, I think, well to my training, because all that is for both
The
piloting,
checklist.
medic, is a way to control adrenaline. Otherwise, you get pretty shook up, you know?
Yeah, we had a saying, if you have an EP, an emergency procedure, first thing you do, we had those little clocks on the airplanes. They were old airplanes that you just wind it up because they were spring loaded. So our saying was, you have an emergency, first thing you do is wind the clock, and that's to slow your adrenaline down and start thinking instead of reacting.
That's a great idea. And you'll listen to that, particularly, if anybody ever listens to pilots, you listen to air emergencies, they stay calm. Or I was on a flight just out of LAX, and pilot comes on and talk, oh, we got a light that says there's a fire in the luggage area, pack, whatever, wherever the luggage is. And you wouldn't, his voice wouldn't have been any different if he was telling you they were giving away free honey buns on the plane. I mean, there was nothing to it. He just stated the facts, turned around, we went back, everything's fine, you know. But that's what you have to be. If you start losing it, and I've seen that as a paramedic, I saw new medics, and they would really, you get too emotional about things. And when you do that, you're going to make mistakes in trading or flying or anything.
Absolutely. There was a question from Bill. He said, You recently started using OptionNet Explorer again. Do you plan on doing any back testing? And if yes, can you describe your plans?"
Yes, unfortunately, that relationship hasn't gone well for me already. So I won't be using.
Didn't take long.
It didn't take long. I won't be using the one software. Uh, yeah, didn't work out. But back testing is a great idea if you have it and you can do it. I think it is a nice way to learn things. I did it a lot in the past, but yeah, sorry, that won't be part of my future. But I think it's a good thing if you have any kind of back testing program. I've never been able to get much out of that one Thinkorswim has the think back. But
Yeah, the on demand or whatever.
yeah, oh yeah, I'll
Yeah.
think back on demand. We
Yeah.
tried for years, and I know Tom, you'll remember this. Back when we were at the other place, we tried for years to get them to put back testing onto the Thinkorswim platform, but it never got done. They always added
Yeah.
something.
They always promised, but never delivered.
Exactly. Yeah, we never did get that. But I wish they had it. I think that they would find it beneficial, but it's hard to get corporations to do things like that unless they see an immediate ROI a lot of times.
Yeah, and there've been a few different automated back testers like Quanti Carlo, but then I did some work with Larry, and then well, Gammon Capital was a fund out in New York that bought the whole company. So that one kind of disappeared. And then we've got Option Omega, which is an online tool. A lot of people use that. In fact, Troy at Option Omega lives in Nashville. He said Dan Sheridan goes to his church. So
Oh,
a small world.
Option Omega, is that like an online platform for back trading
Yeah,
or?
it's an online back tester for option strategies. It's pretty good.
Hmm.
It's still not as good in my opinion as like hand going through like with the way Option View did or Option Explorer where you can, every day or every hour, every 5 minutes, whatever the granularity is, you can step through a trade and kind of feel the emotions. Okay, I'm up, I'm down, how am I going to adjust it? Do I need to get out? You can make those kind of decisions, kind of simulating it, but the Option Omega is just click a button and it runs some tests and tells you the results. So you don't get that feel.
Yeah, it's
Um,
better to walk through it. And if you don't have a back testing ability, one thing I always tell people that I'm teaching, I think it's a good idea. Anytime you put on a trade, why'd you do that today? Oh, the VIX was here. Okay, write that down. Adjusted it. Where was it at? Why did you adjust? What did you adjust with? And if you write all those things down and you review them yourself, or if you review them with an educator, I think it can help you a lot. But if you don't keep records, what'll happen is you'll go maybe be in a trade for a week or two, and you'll go back through and go, "Why did I do that there? Why did I do that?" And then you can't. Sometimes it can be a little hard to remember why you did something. But I think keeping good notes on why you're doing what you're doing at any time in your trading career is important. But it's really important when you're trying to learn.
and I remember when I was starting to learn options, I didn't take Dan his advice about dipping your toe in the water. I spent a little bit too much time back testing and not live trading. So I think it's important to actually put some live trades on while you're learning, but very small, like one or two contracts, because you don't get that fear and greed and all that stuff, those emotions with a back test. It's completely different. So you need to do both.
No, it's completely different whenever you're in the real thing. It was the same way as a medic. I remember, and I've seen this more than once. They teach you CPR, it's teach you with a dummy. He's laying on the floor and all the things that go into it, and you start CPR. Then you go out in the field and you get a call and you get there, and uh, the person is laying between the bed and the wall in the back bedroom. You go, wait, how do I do CPR? I can't I can't get in position here because the bed's in the way. Well, you learn very
Right.
quickly. You got to pick those people up and move them. But you'd be surprised how many newer medics go, oh my, what do I do? I can't reach them from here. Well, you're going to have to move them. And your fear is, oh, you're not breathing, and here I'm messing around. Well, you don't have a choice. You have to move them out of there. And I think that kind of thing happens where you have to get experience, and then you'll be a lot better at things. But without keeping records, getting good experience, you'll probably never improve yourself. It's like anything in life. You really have to do things, and you have to do them over and over and repeat good things and cut back on bad ones as much as you can to get better and better.
I've seen people ask questions like, I'm in a trade and it's down a lot of money. How do I fix it? And what advice would you give to people that have those kinds of problems?
Oh, well, I mean, it depends. You shouldn't be trading a trade so big you can't repair it if you needed to, if it's that kind of trade. So, you're missing out if you're doing calendars and flies and you don't know how to maybe add those. But one little trick you can do is, let's say you're doing spy butterflies, and if it gets to the edge of a fly, you want to add a second one, but you don't have a lot of money. You can do things like, if you trade in things you could cut down in size, say you have a 242 fly and this in SPY, you can sell one of those contracts and then use that money to buy another one. So you'd have two one lot flies on a double complex instead of that one two lot. That's one way to kind of keep your capital level. But your money can evaporate pretty quick if you overload yourself like that. If you just put something on and you hope it doesn't go wrong because you can't fix it, you can't afford it, then that's a problem. I've had people that happen to put on a calendar, and maybe, between when I meet them back again, they put it on way too big. And now we have a gap opening down and they're down a bunch of money. They go, what do I do? And I said, well, there's nothing you can do. You can't fix it. It's 50 points below your adjustment point. Well, what do I do? I can't lose the money. Well, unfortunately, you can lose. The market doesn't care if you can lose money or can't, or how much money you need to make. So just keep that in mind. It's a cruel world out there, and it doesn't care if you lose money or if you have the money to fix it.
And I
That's
think it's
terrible.
important for people to prepare for the good and the bad, especially the bad. I
Oh
had
yeah,
I had a class with Optionetics years ago with George Fontanelles and Tom Gentile, and George said the first question he asked when anybody brought a new system to him was, "How much can I lose?" So I think you have to keep, your contingency plans ready. Robert Chastain over at Stratagem Trade has what he calls a kill shot. So he'll put like a condor or whatever structure it is, but he'll have an order ready to go. If the market's going the wrong way and he's not comfortable, he just clicks a button, submits the order, and he just neutralizes the delta and takes the stress off the trade.
yeah.
So it's important to plan ahead. Don't just wait till you're down money and then, okay, now what do I do? Think about it
Exactly.
ahead of
It's like we
time.
were saying with your engines go out at 30,000 feet. You don't want to
Right.
figure out then that you need, hey, what do I do here exactly? Well, it's better to have
Well,
a plan before.
and we had boldface procedure. So the boldface was you had to have it memorized word for word. So like you lose an engine on takeoff, you don't have time to go put your nose in a checklist. You got to know what to do. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, we had that as paramedics. You had to know the algorithm of which drugs you gave and how much. And so if you didn't know that, you never get through. And like advanced cardiac life support, they don't do this anymore, but it used to be that, before you shock somebody, you always say clear and look all around, make sure nobody's touching that person, or they'll get shocked and then you have two patients. But they used to, if you didn't, they used to fail you and they used to try to catch you. They'd have somebody leaning on a foot. They'd do anything to trap you if you couldn't remember to do that, and you'd automatically fail the whole course and have to repeat it.
oh
if
wow.
but so yeah, it's important to get your surroundings and know what you're going to do. I see Lindsay said, speaking of tough, Lindsay, I talked to the margin department about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and they assured me that in SPX there will be no change whatsoever to any calendars or anything you do. It's just a rumor. And matter of fact, I got emails yesterday from Schwab telling me right there in writing, no change in margin, no change in option, um, what would you call it, permissions. Anything you come in with, according to the email I got yesterday, you keep. Any option permission you have, any margin privileges you have, nothing's changing. And the margin department themselves told me that in SPX it's not, but they did tell me in NDX and RUT they are going to do some crazy margining. I don't know why they're picking on them specifically. Um, but in SPX, you will notice no difference according to what they're telling me when your account gets taken over by Schwab.
And
I
I
mean, if
heard there
you
there might
markets,
be a
people will leave.
difference if it's a zero DTE calendar.
Yeah, then well, yeah, they did in the last hour or zero D. Yeah, you could have problems like that. Yeah. Well, you got to watch who you're talking to, Toss there, Lindsay. I had to teach the tech help, the actual trading help guy how a calendar works one time. And then he disagreed with me. I said, why don't you ask your supervisor? And then he had to come back and tell me I was right. So you never know who you're dealing with there. But all I know is every email I got says nothing changes. And my margin department conversation, they say nothing's changing. If they do, well, we'll just move to different brokerage, right? Because I'm not paying a
Oh,
$500,000 margin to open a calendar. I'm not. So
well, and typically your first level support are the more inexperienced guys. So yeah, be careful who you're talking to.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, that they're really lately, I've noticed that over the last couple of years. I mean, they're there to help with options questions and they're really weak on it. You can get some bad information.
So Marks, what are some of your favorite memories from teaching so far?
Oh, well, favorite member. I always like it whenever I have students go on to develop themselves into great traders and keep on going and I see them, even years and years later, they're still doing well, and that happens a lot. Uh, and then, sometimes you have funny memories. Like I had a guy, oh, we're gonna have a first session, Mark. I wanted to do an iron condor and rut. Can I put on something small? Because I'm new to iron condors. I've never done one. And I said, well, I'd rather teach a person. He goes, can I just put on something really small? I said, okay. You can put on something small in Russell 2000 Iron Condor. And we have our first session. He opens up the screen to show me his thinkorswim screen, and he had on a 500 contract Iron Condor in the Russell. It was a $1 million trade. And I said, what? is that live? Goes, oh, that's live. I just wanted to throw something on. I said, that's not throwing something on. That's a giant trade, you know. And
Right.
he goes, luckily he was up 2%. I said, you take that off right now, you know.
Oh yeah.
But so you can get some things like that. But you know, I think the best memories are those when you know you've taught somebody and you see you get them out on their own and they're doing well. And nothing's more meaningful than that. Otherwise, you feel kind of frustrated. Sometimes I have that happen when people you do your best to teach them and they're unwilling or unable, you know, to execute that, or they can't seem to stop the bad habits. You have to control fear and greed. And if you can't do that, if you're the guy who says, I'm up 10% in this calendar, but hey, it's dead center. I'm going to stay in it. It's going to be great. No, it's not a great idea, you know, because things can change in a big hurry. So I don't know. I've just enjoyed seeing all those learning points for me, teaching people that were good and bad along the way. And I love seeing people develop into really, really good traders.
So if you had somebody who's brand new to options, what advice would you give them?
Well, first off, I think you really should get some education. And I'm not saying that to be self-serving, but where do you do anything where you don't try to learn first? You know, this is your money, by the way. Um, so you need to at least have somebody guide you through the beginning. I mean, you can read books, you can watch YouTube videos or whatever. And I have a YouTube channel, the Options Mentor is what it's called. But on things like that, even when I do that, I show trade ideas on my YouTube channel, but I don't teach you the nuts and bolts of everything about it. I come to that with an approach that you already have know the basics. Well, a lot of times people watch those and they can watch them and they can make the mistake of not knowing the basics, but think they'll just throw on the same thing. So get yourself some education, however you choose to do that, whether that's through books, mentoring, you know, education classes. You know, Aramer.com has a lot of expert traders here to help you. But however you want to do it, you need to know what you're doing before you start just throwing on spreads and everything, especially in things like futures where you can have extra margin that is available to you that can really get you in trouble. So that's important. I do think education is very important and don't get too big too fast.
Yeah, there was a student, I forget if it was Casey's or yours when we were at the old place. And it was a lady and her husband was a neurosurgeon. So they had tons of money, but she was losing 10, 20, $25,000 per trade. And I forget who the mentor was, but he kept telling her, you got to trade like one lots, you know, but she couldn't do it. And then after a couple months, she was just gone. Her husband probably pulled the plug. So that's it.
Now
So,
that was me. I had a guy who, well, he was worth $100 million and he had like 7 million in his account and he wanted to get too big too fast. And I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. He goes, I don't, it doesn't matter to me, Mark. You know, I can lose a little money here. I got, you know, I can lose, you know, several thousand. I don't care, you know. I said, yeah, you're going to care, even though it doesn't matter. Well, then he put on a trade he shouldn't have in between our mentoring appointments, came back and he had lost 20 grand doing this $300,000 double diagonal. And he was furious. I mean, he was beyond furious. He was so livid that he lost. This is $20,000. I said, yes, I told you you wouldn't like it, even though 20,000 doesn't mean anything to you. It still means something to you, you know. And if God forbid it does really mean something to you, then that's really sad. Like Tom's describing, people just. I had a guy in who he was in a credit call vertical in the Russell, and he kept rolling it every month because he kept losing as the market went up. And this was several years ago. And then about this is 3 or 4 years ago, when he came to me in the last 7 months, he came to get mentoring finally after he took $1.3 million account down to 300,000 with that one trade, just rolling
whoa.
it and rolling it and rolling it. And he'd lost all this money and told me, I can't do this. I'll have to keep working. I got to get the money back. I said, well, you know, you're going to have to go back at it slow, you know, and we went about a process, but that's the thing. You've got to make sure you're honest with yourself. You know, that brings up this is a little bit esoteric, but I'll bring it up. You just remember if you do something like that, and that's a fairly common technique where people go, oh, I got trapped on one side of an iron condor or whatever, and they roll to the next period. Let's roll to the next period. Well, just remember, just tell yourself this because it's true. When you rolled like that, you just lost money. And don't ever forget that. Don't ever think, hey, I can't, I got to get out here. It's the end of March. I'll roll into April and then I'll get it back. Okay, yeah, you can do that. But you just lost in March and don't lose sight of that because
Yeah,
if
you
you
just
do,
locked in a loss.
yeah, you end up like that guy whenever you do that.
And that kind of goes with Bill's question. He said sometimes a trade is adjusted 6 or 8 times can still be profitable. What allows that profitable outcome since each adjustment is generally loss?
Well, I think if you look at a lot of trades, you might get away with that in, say, a fly. The reason why you can get away with that is they're so theta rich butterflies. Or if you look at a butterfly, generally speaking, if you put on a butterfly, you can probably normally make what would you say, 10 times what you have in the trade? You could possibly make it.
If you pin it, yeah.
Yeah. Or you can make, even if you don't pin it, you can make a lot more than you have in it. So anytime a trade has a high you can make a lot more money than you spend on it. That high reward to risk, you have the availability a lot of times to repair a trade, take a hit, and still get that theta to help dig you out of that. Whereas some trades don't afford that to you because, say, it was a credit spread, you really can't do that in a credit spread because there's not enough meat on the bone for you to take many losses at all. But if you do something like a fly, you can do, or even a calendar, you can do that because they're so theta rich. You can make a lot more money than you put into it originally.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with condors as far as especially, the typical new condor trader wants to go really wide, like selling 5 delta, and it's like, oh, I can have a 95% win rate. But then your risk is huge, but then you don't have much premium to play with either. So if you're going to adjust it, it's just difficult to try and save that if you need to adjust, like the market starts ripping in one direction.
Yeah, and a lot of times when people trade iron condors, and I've seen this a lot, where they'll, you make money 4 trades in a row, and that one loser that you have after that sometimes wipes all that out, depending on how you manage the risk of it. I had a
Right.
student, he was doing that. Well, I'm taking 3% profits all the time in iron condors. Says, well, I don't know how that's going to work when you get a loss. And he wiped himself out in one trade, like
Yep.
3 months of gains just gone, you know.
There used to be an option or a Yahoo group called the Option Club. I think it's defunct now, but there was a market maker on there, Michael Catalino, I think his name was, and he had a suggestion: take any strategy, anyone you want, and trade both sides of it and make money on both trades. They have a good thought experiment. So if you're selling condors, try buying them and have them both make money.
Yeah, I actually bought one. I remember during '08, I bought one by accident on one of those crazy days. That really cost me. But yes, buying condors is not a bad idea. Don't do it in high volatility.
Yeah,
That's what I did to
but
myself.
it is limited risk. That's kind of the Ernie strategy over at 0-DTE. He's buying out of the money flies, like about one expected move away, and on 0 DTE. And he'll put 250 bucks in a fly, and then if it goes out worthless, it goes out worthless. But if it gets near his fly, he's making a lot of money. So I think overall
That's
he
my
makes
favorite
money
way to
with
do
it.
that kind of thing is I love those exponential, what I call a time bomb fly where hey, I think the market's going here and I'll buy this cheap and when it gets there, I'll make a lot. Those are great fun for speculation and can be very effective.
And you're never going to blow your account out with that either.
No, no, not as long as you don't, do a $10,000 time bomb fly or something.
Right. And Bill says, how close to expiry would you take a 35-day fly?
Well, that is as close. Well, okay, you mean once I'm in it. Okay.
Yeah, once you're
Once
in.
I'm in it, really it goes the same for that as it does pretty much any other trade. I'd like to be out before expiration week. I'll take as little as a 5% profit on the Friday before expiration week. However, once I'm in it, Tuesday, Wednesday would be the latest I'd ever go. I don't want to be there Thursday, and I certainly don't want to be there Friday. So I would say, yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday of expiration week would be the latest for any trade that I do that's non-directional, not a spec trade.
And also keep an eye on all the economic things coming out, FOMC, GDP, CPI. that stuff can really move the market too.
Yeah, it's like the PCE, which is the Fed's, it seems to be their favorite inflation reading number, comes out this Friday with the market close. So, like I've been telling people, you want to be as flat as possible over this weekend, I would say, because not only do you have the end of the quarter, which can cause a lot of volatility on Thursday and a lot of price movement, and the first day of the quarter on Monday, which can also cause a lot of price movement as funds move things around. You have that PCE on Friday, and the market will have to react to that. So be careful, this this weekend with what you take over a weekend. If it's really a danger, if a big move's dangerous for you, you might not want to do that.
Right. Well, I like to keep these around half an hour, and that's about what we've been going. So, are there any parting words you want to let people know before we sign off?
Oh, no, I appreciate everybody showing interest in this and I love the stuff too. And I think as we go forward together, we can all learn together, whether you're educating people, whether you're being taught, whether you're just trading, uh, everybody can benefit from just learning a little bit of something from somebody else. And that's what I would say. Be careful with what you're doing. Always have a plan. Always have a plan and educate yourself in whatever fashion you find that works for you. But learn about trading and how things can affect you the way the price moves. That's very important.
And just a little pitch for Mark. Mark has a new flat fly course he just or class he just put out. His trade alerts are doing really well. I think you've had what, four trades you've closed now?
Four
Three
trades, three of
three
them have
winners.
worked. And for this month of March, actually, the trade alert service is $100 a month. If you traded the same size I did, which was never more than 3 grand at once, I believe, you would be up $1,100 for the first month. So
Very nice.
that it worked out pretty well. Past results don't mean that's how it's going to be in the future, of course. But yeah, a lot of exciting stuff going on. And with and the opening bell, I have that too, and Traders Lounge,
Right.
a lot of stuff on the site.
So lots of ways to benefit from Mark's experience, and we're glad to have Mark at Aramir, and I'm sure we'll be getting together soon in the future. So thanks, Mark, for coming on, and thanks everyone for coming, and really appreciate everyone, and we'll see you next time.
All righty, bye bye. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, bye.